Hey y'all, I'm Tess Holliday, and welcome to my slumber party. Each week, I'm going to introduce you to folks who are making the world a better place. So put on your pajamas, grab a snack, and let's change the world from our bedroom. Hey y'all, welcome to my slumber party. I am so excited to be hanging out with you guys today. And I'm even equally excited, even more, I was going to say more excited, but I'm equally excited to have my guests with me today. It's kind of surreal. So my guest today is Erin Gruwell, who is the OG baddie in the teaching industry, in my opinion. That's how I'm going to describe Erin. Erin is the founder of the Freedom Writers. I mean, not many people can go around saying that Hilary Swank has played them in a movie, so that's cool. But that's like the smallest part of what is actually cool about Erin and the work that she is doing. And accompanying Erin is my BFF, Debbie Fernandez. And Debbie is also a Freedom Writer teacher. And this is just a full circle moment for Debster and for myself. And I'm just happy to introduce you guys to these wonderful individuals today.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
I have to say, normally I introduce you guys and then I get into what we're wearing, but we have to just talk about what we're wearing right now for the slumber party. So, Erin, for those of you guys that can't see, if you're not watching on YouTube, you should, because Erin's outfit is the cutest thing I've ever seen. Erin, tell everybody what you're wearing.
So I'm channeling my inner lion. I feel like I'm Beyonce, who has Sasha Fierce as her alter ego. So I'm decked out in a onesie with my little lion headdress, and I'm a Leo.
Yes.
So this is my opportunity to just be kind of silly. And I think in the teaching world, we just love props. We love costumes. So I don't have any sexy lingerie. So I thought, if I don't have any sexy lingerie, I'm going onesie.
I love it. And I mean, listen, at my slumber party, it's come as you want. And I really wasn't expecting to be as sexy as I am today, given that I'm like interviewing teachers. But when I walked in, I was like, that is the most teacher outfit and very you. And it makes me so happy. You look so cute. Debster, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing an outfit that I went into my sister's closet and stole from. Of course, because that's what you do at slumber parties, is you steal from your sister. So I'm wearing a torrid outfit, courtesy of Tess Holliday.
She's wearing this like super cute little tie-dye set I bought for myself that says focus on the positive, which is very much these two individuals, like I don't want to say like mantras because I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but they fight through impossible odds with their jobs. So when I bought this pajama set for myself and it was one size too small, I'm like, perfect. This will fit Debbie.
And I love that we're going out to dinner after this. So we're all going to go out into the town with my onesie and her jammies.
We really are. Yeah. And I'm just going to be there. Like for those of you that, are listening, I have a like black silk slip dress on, lots of cleavage, and like this little robe thing. And originally when I got dressed, this was not what I planned on wearing. And we're here. So, I feel cute and a little overdressed.
I could speak for Deborah's and my students. They're going to love it, especially our teenage boys.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, parents. So, part of why I wanted to have both Erin and Debbie on today is because Debbie, I've shared on social media a lot the past few years. Debbie and I met at Disneyland years ago. And she quickly became one of my good friends. We've been friends now. How long have we been friends, Debbie?
It'll be 3 years, April 6th.
There you go.
I was counting.
We've been friends 3 years, April 6th. And when I met Debbie, what struck me about her was just her heart and also how much she cares about the work that she does. And, I always describe Debbie, I always kind of have her like one line elevator pitch when I introduce her to people, because I'm like, you have to know my friend Debbie and like the work she's doing. And Debbie does restorative practices for children and children with trauma and kind of like rehabilitates them. And I'm saying that very casually, but it's not. And the work that she's doing is truly saving lives. And so when I met Debbie, yeah, I loved her, but what I loved about her was her drive. And she quickly told me, maybe a couple months into our friendship, that it was a dream of hers to meet Erin Gruwell, and that Erin was her personal hero. And I knew about Erin way before, like I knew who Erin was, but I wasn't super familiar with her work because it's not, my area of expertise. I'm not a teacher. So we talked about Erin all the time. One day I'm just going to meet her. And, it was so, I would always tell her, you're going to meet her. You're going to meet her. And then you got to meet Erin. And here we are. And we're going to dive into the specifics of all of that. But that's why I said earlier, it's a full circle moment, because it's really special to have my best friend sitting beside her hero, who is they're now colleagues.
Yeah.
And Deborah's already crying.
I tried not to, but yeah.
That's how you know it's a good slumber
It's a surreal
party.
moment, right? It's a surreal moment.
Wait, we didn't get tissues.
It's okay, I'm good.
So obviously today we're going to talk about what it means to be a freedom rider teacher and how they're impacting their community. And I also want to, part of why they're on is I want to hear some advice from the actual people who are, changing these children's lives and just doing work that I feel like a lot of folks really, maybe, I don't want to say shy away from, but I think that, it's not easy to do what these two individuals are doing. And I want to just shine a light on that more, because the more I've learned about what Erin and Debbie are doing and what Erin has created, it has inspired me and it's made me be more patient with my kids. So I hope that as we dive into today's episode, whoever's listening can feel a little inspired, if you're wanting to help with your community or your own children, it's never too late. So before I get into just asking you guys a million questions, we're going to discuss our snack for today. So Erin had shared with me that one of her favorite snacks was popcorn and M&Ms, which is what we were going to do. And then, my morning didn't go as planned, but I did bring her other favorite that she mentioned, which is peanut butter cookies. So I brought...
And Girl Scout, no less.
Yes. So we have Girl Scout peanut butter cookies. And what did you say your favorite drink was? But I fumbled that too.
No, I love an Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
A little bit of iced tea, a little bit of a lemonade.
And we did, we are all drinking Arizona drinks. I have fruit punch. Cheers.
Cheers.
And they're drinking their versions, but it's fun. I have to take a sip now. It's giant. I haven't had like an Arizona drink in forever, so it's nostalgic to me.
So good.
I don't drink Arnold Palmers because I don't drink tea. I feel like I'm the worst person from the South that I don't drink tea.
Not even sweet tea?
No.
Wow.
But I haven't tried it in a long time. Maybe I just need to try it.
Maybe at dinner tonight.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, at dinner. I want to discuss my week a little bit with you guys and your week as well. So each week I do kind of like a recap, and lately it's been talking about dating and kids and how hard I'm finding it trying to juggle everything. And this week I just was like, I need to just focus on the good stuff instead of focusing on everything that's going bad. Not bad, because I'm very blessed and I know that, but it's a lot easier for me to focus on the things that are going kind of haywire than to actually look at my life and think that this gets to be my day today, like hanging out with you guys. This gets to be my life, and to just feel immense gratitude that, things can always be worse. So for you guys, when you're feeling kind of, which I know your jobs are stressful. But when you're feeling like overwhelmed and all of that, is there anything that either one of you do to just kind of pick yourself up and focus on the good stuff amidst the craziness?
I do two things. I actually go to counseling.
Love that.
And Monday, which we're recording today on a Monday, is my day. So I got here early, sat in my car, and did my appointment in my car. I just think that having to model good mental health for my students is a really important factor in my life, since I'm surrounded by people who are struggling with mental health. So for me, counseling is a must every week. And my counselor was really sweet to readjust my schedule for you today.
Aw.
And I also have a large yellow lab. You met my dog.
I did.
So I love to just go for a walk with my dog. It just kind of gets me out and seeing my neighbors. I often walk in my pajamas, not my onesie, but my pajamas. So I'm the crazy neighbor that, is walking my dog at all hours of the day.
You mean like every other neighbor in where we live?
Yes.
Because Erin and I live near each other, and everyone is always walking their dogs in pajamas. But yeah, I mean, getting fresh air always helps, and I am a big, supporter of therapy and counseling. I've been in counseling since I was 10, and probably will always be forever.
Me too.
Yeah. What about you, Debster?
So I definitely love my puppies. That's kind of my break. I'll just sit and kind of turn off everything.
Yeah.
And that's been definitely helping. Disneyland was my place. So sometimes I'll even just go to downtown Disney, put ears on just to walk and have that peace. I don't know why. There's something about not having to be responsible. Like putting on ears and being silly and not having to think about it. Because I feel like we take on the weight of the world sometimes. So sometimes it's like a matter of just driving in a car, or I call you and I talk to you and we'll just hang out. So it's just getting that mental weight off.
Yeah, I mean, I love nothing more when I don't have my kids. If I can just hop in my car and drive. I mean, I don't have the luxury of doing that often because I have Bowie in the back that's like, I want a snack. I want to watch your phone. I have to pee. Or Riley, how long are we going to be in the car? So, it's like juggling that time. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's just so much to be grateful for. And I just try to focus on that. I will update people a bit on my dating life, though, because everyone has been very invested. And then I forget that, people that I might be talking to or flirting with are listening to my podcast. So I have to stop outing myself and giving out all my secrets. But yeah, I mean, dating is going okay. I'm less bitter about it. I don't know if bitter is the right word, but yeah, I'm just trying to really just let things happen and stop trying to control everything around me. I think that's been a big lesson from the universe, is that I just need to just let things go and be.
How was dating in a pandemic?
Dating in a pandemic, Erin, is not fun and it's weird, but I have to say it's made me appreciate moments that I get with individuals that actually show up. Because I've been stood up by one person, another person left after our date in a very abrupt way, and then sent me this really sad excuse of a text. I've had a bunch of weird different things, but I've just tried to remember that everyone's going through their own stuff. So I'm trying to be more understanding, but also maintain my boundaries while being it's hard because I'm like, oh, well, it's a pandemic. And then maybe this isn't how they normally are. And then you think, no, you need to see it for what it's worth. So it's not fun, but we move, I guess. So as I have mentioned a few times about throughout this podcast, is I love my friend Debster because of how big her heart is. But, I don't want to just talk the entire time about how much I love you and how inspired I am by Erin and seeing you guys come together. So I'm going to let you do the talking. Erin, tell me how you and Debbie met, please.
Well, we initially met at an event at a university where my original Freedom Writers made a documentary. We had hundreds of hours of film footage. It took 20 years,
Wow.
2 decades to make this documentary. And before we released it, we just wanted to see how the world would respond. So we were showing it at different universities and getting, feedback and constructive criticism. And Deborah came. And the documentary is so emotional. So for someone like Deborah who emotes, you can imagine she probably needed an entire box of Kleenex. But what I loved about meeting her was she always travels with students. And so she's the Pied Piper of vulnerable youth. And so what she's able to do is to use our story for a mirror for her students. So it was love at first sight.
Oh.
And we have a really unique teacher training program that we do. And it's 5 days in Long Beach, and we hermetically seal teachers from the world. So when they come into our bubble, pre-pandemic, they don't leave our bubble for 5 days.
Yeah.
And over those 5 days, we really get to know our teachers. And we make a commitment to them that it is a lifelong journey. So my original Freedom Writers will always be Freedom Writers. And my Freedom Writer teachers will always be Freedom Writers. And we're vulnerable and we're exposed. And there's moments where we laugh hysterically and cry hysterically. And then we send each other back in the world knowing that we are part of this big collective family. So when Deborah went back to her students, unbeknownst to all of us, we were going to have a pandemic. And unbeknownst to all of us, it was going to get really hard to be a teacher. And I think we just gravitated to each other even more because I think when you are dealing with vulnerable kids, it's overwhelming. And Deborah has some of the most at-risk students. I should say the most at-hope students.
Yeah.
And she sees just that. She sees their hope. She sees their promise. And she's able to get their possibility to come out. And they're kids who are labeled. They're kids who've been thrown away. To be in her program, these kids between the ages of 10 and 13 have been expelled from every class, every school, and every district they've ever attended. So imagine being 10 years old and already being labeled and stereotyped that your teachers, your principals, your superintendents don't want you. And Deborah's heart is so huge. She says, well, I want you. And so to be wanted and chosen and selected is exactly what she does with her students.
You're right. I've been to where Debbie teaches in the high desert of California. So it's kind of like towards Vegas, still in California. It's surrounded by how many prisons?
I want to say there's 4 to 5 prisons around there, mostly private prisons.
Yeah. And these children, some of them don't have, the safest home environments. They don't have support of family. I mean, that's part of one of the requirements to be in your program is that they do have to have some kind of support to be in your program, but they just haven't had the love and support that they have needed. And, it's very easy to see these kids, like you said, Erin, and think, that they're troublemakers and getting into problems and all of this stuff. But that's why I think what you guys do is so incredible because you're looking at the actual quote unquote problems and saying, okay, what's going on? And I think, that must be really powerful for a 10-year-old to hear from a teacher,
It's looking at that bigger picture and looking at, okay, the behavior is just it's a symptom of something bigger, something else that's going on and what we can do to kind of fix it. Because if you're told you're a problem your whole life, you're always going to think that about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think what was amazing too about Deborah when the pandemic first happened, I mean, we were all scared. I think everyone in society was very selfish about how is this going to affect me financially or personally or dating or all of those elements. And I think for Deborah, she was dealing with vulnerable kids who their only meal was at school. Their only connection was with a loving teacher. And so when you take away the most basic things like free breakfast and free lunch, what are her kids going to eat?
Yeah.
When you take away for the ability to have any kind of social interaction because they don't have Wi-Fi, they are so poor they might not have electricity. And so every week, initially when California shut down, we would have these Freedom Rider teacher calls. And Deborah would just weep about her kids, about some of them walking miles to a Starbucks to be able to turn their computer into a light socket if they lived in a trailer, or for the kids that didn't have access to a school-issued Chromebook. So what I loved about talking to Deborah almost daily initially was understanding how bad this really is economically, and that digital divide that we were all terrified would happen. It happened to her first. You know, she was the neon flag saying, don't forget about my kids. My kids are hurting. My kids are vulnerable. They're not eating. They're not connecting. A lot of these kids had no way to even go to school to get that Chromebook. So it was, really challenging to hear her cries for help. And they didn't fall on deaf ears because I know she has you.
Well, she has you, and also if I remember correctly, she wasn't able to get the Chromebooks that she needed for her classrooms or all of them, and you were able to help with that, weren't you?
So we realized that what we could do is be connectors. So I was able to galvanize our community, and we started getting donations of these like shiny, perfect Apple computers that are better than mine.
Amazing.
And they would show up at our doorstep, and my entire staff would be like, can we keep this one and swap out? And I'd be like, no, this is for Deborah's kids. And literally in the midst of the worst spikes, she was like Santa Claus. She was driving around the high desert, delivering these shiny new computers to these kids. She was crying, the kids were crying. And it gave them independence, it gave them agency, it gave them an opportunity to catch up on everything they missed out. And she was like this road warrior. She found them. Like she realized, I'm not supposed to be out in the world, but I'm out in the world for these kids.
Yeah, and that's part of why I love her so much and admire you so much. And I've been with her on these drives. I've done a couple with her where you delivered Easter baskets to your kids last year right after the pandemic. And you have taken snacks, like bags of groceries and stuff like that to them. And I want to ask both of you, like obviously you guys are going beyond your kind of call of duty of just being, a teacher, right? But for you guys, I don't feel like you're just like a regular old teacher, but I know you guys started out not being these like superheroes that you are. So whoever wants to go first, I want to know how you guys got started and maybe when you realized that you wanted to take kind of a different path with your teaching.
So actually when I first started out, I thought I was going to be in like my hometown and I was going to be teaching kindergarten and everything was going to be perfect. And so it was interesting change when I went up to my school. And I remember just the first time I had a student who was just calling out and the teacher was really berating him. The kid was crying and he was a first grader. And so I just took him in my classroom and kind of figured out like, okay, they kept telling me he's the bad kid. And I was like, I like him. He's cool. Like, let's figure out what's going on with him. And it turned out that his mother had passed away in a car accident. His dad was driving, and instantly, on the night of his birthday, he lost his parents. Dad went to jail. He was with his mom. So he was crying all the time. He was with grandma and someone he didn't really know. And he was crying and just distraught. And I remember just kind of like, it was kind of a wake-up call of like looking at the students and like, how they're acting and realizing like kind of the stuff that I went through when I was younger and like how I would act out and like looking at these kids. And as I started, it was like instantly when you start getting to that school and you start like, this student had body odor issues, but it was because they didn't have a way to clean their clothes, So like, what do? You get their clothes and you do their laundry for them. Because otherwise you're going to watch this kid be tortured in school. So it's just kind of, I don't know how it happened. I think it just happens. Like you just do what you have to do. And I think you do what you feel is right for the kids. And I think it's just how it fell. And honestly, I had watched the Freedom Rider movie. So early on, I was like, this is how I want to teach. Like this is what I want to do. And then when I started actually living it, I think that's when Erin even became more of a focus or the Freedom Riders, because I was like, this is real life. like I didn't realize that the stuff that my students went through was real life until I experienced it. I had no idea. Like, I can't teach a language arts lesson when there's a shooting in the neighborhood. Like, we have to talk about these things first. Or when I had a student who was hungry and like she didn't have any, her mom didn't have breakfast, or she couldn't get her in time for breakfast. And so I would just keep snacks, and that was the only way I could keep her in my classroom. So I think it just kind of developed. I don't know how it really happened. It just kind of fell into place. And then, having people like the Freedom Riders and seeing that's you're doing what's right. Like, what you're doing is right for those kids, and having the louder noise around you telling you're wrong, but seeing those kids change, then that's what's the important part. I think that's what really changed me, is watching those kids.
Yeah.
I think what was exciting for Deborah is when we bring the teachers together, about 30 of my original Freedom Riders teach side by side. So, and we keep that a secret. So all these teachers that are listening, sorry, the secret's out. But if we bring in 30 teachers, we have 30 Freedom Riders. So it's this beautiful one-to-one pairing. And so, for some teachers, they've read the book, or for some teachers, they've seen the movie. And in the way that we read the Diary of Anne Frank, and then we went to Anne's attic in Amsterdam, there's a moment in time where someone just is still that age, even though, 50 years have passed. And so the Freedom Riders are now adults, but they've never forgot their roots, and they've never forgot their story. And so for them to very poignantly still tell their story is amazing. And I think what Deborah was able to surmise is, even though they were teenagers when they had me, a lot of their stories happened in elementary school. And so the sad truth in our country is there really has been a school-to-prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And for a lot of the kids that she served and a lot of the kids that I served, that school-to-prison pipeline starts in kindergarten. And so kids get labeled, and they get brushed aside, and they become a part of this system. And thank God for the summer and the fact that people are talking about a racial reckoning and social protest, because now people can actually sit down and say, there really is systematic racism intrinsic in our school system.
Absolutely.
And how do we change that? And I think for both Deborah and I, we were screaming that to anyone and everyone that would listen. And now people are actually listening.
What does that feel like for people to actually be listening now for you? Because you've been doing this for a long time, and you've been working with marginalized communities that, to be frank, no one really cared about. And, now you're kind of seeing, I know that obviously there is some progress that's been made, but there's still, the fact that Debbie is still teaching these students that are, so young, that are still dealing with some of the stuff that you dealt with in your early classrooms. What's it like for you to see now these issues that you've been fighting for kind of like at the forefront now?
It's so ironic. It was hard having an administration where there was a bully at the bully pulpit. And so the outlandish things that our former president would say that would ignite tiki torques and khakis in Charlottesville, or, the massive shootings we've seen. I think a lot of those moments go back to allowing hate to live and enabling hate to live. So I think that there is a stigma that racism is only when people are cloaked in a white hoodie and burning a cross.
Yeah. And
racism could be in a boardroom. It could be in a classroom. It could be in the White House. And I think that was really hard for me to understand, that I thought in education, it's based on meritocracy, and it's based on a belief that every kid can make it. And when you come up against intrinsic racism in a school system, it's really hard. When you see have and have-nots in a system, it's really maddening. And so I think that we felt that we were screaming to anyone and everyone that would listen. And in doing so, we would sometimes get the backlash. So when our book came out, we had death threats. When our book came out, the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan came after us, which is cuckoo crazy.
Wow.
I'm like a teacher driving a Prius, and I've got the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan wanting to kill the Freedom Riders and myself. So we weren't prepared for that at all, because was in another state and another place. But you don't have to be in another state and another place to still have that kind of racism.
Absolutely.
So that could be in my own city. It could be in my own community. And that was a hard reckoning.
Debbie, what has been the most rewarding part of doing this journey with Erin and the Freedom Writers?
I think I felt alone for a long time. I think it's why I get so emotional. Is I felt like I was alone. I mean, I had my best friend Roma, who I dragged into this school too.
You really
Shout
did.
out to her because I literally said we're going, and she interviewed. But I think seeing 40-year-olds like seeing 39 and 40-year-olds that are changed because a teacher made a difference gave me the like, that's it. So do you want to show like what happens, and if it really works, I'm going to show you what happens to 40-year-old. Like I came back on fire and I was like, the Freedom Writers, they're adults and they were changed by that teacher. So I know I can make a difference. I know that we can put that little dash. I had a 20-year-old come back to me and was like, Miss Fernandez, you were my favorite third grade teacher and da-da-da, and talked about me and gave me a hug. And I was like, okay, I don't care if it was one kid I made a difference to. That's what it was for.
Absolutely. Do you guys have any, I remember you telling me about the young man that came back to you like all this time. And Erin, I know that you have had literally, I mean, you have your Freedom Writer students as an example of what Debbie was just saying. But do you guys have a particular moment that stood out to you where you realized that, wow, the work I'm doing is actually going to impact and change this child's life and possibly the course of their future?
I want to brag about one of Deborah's students.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when the pandemic started, we wanted to create ways to reach kids that are really hurting. And the original Freedom Writers came to our office and we made these wonderful tapes. They were reading the book and choosing really difficult subjects and trying to put a face on what they call social emotional learning, which is like a big fancy term for just being in the trenches with a kid. So we came up with terms like resilience and perseverance and hope. So we wanted to create it and then test it on students. And what I love about the age in which Deborah teaches is they have no filter. And they're not sycophants. And they tell you exactly how they feel rather than telling you what they think you want to hear. So sometimes teachers will kind of, be overly complimentary, and sometimes people in academia don't just cut to the chase. And I knew that a 10-year-old would cut to the chase.
Yeah, they're good like that.
So we asked Deborah, could we practice our material on your kids? And we'll meet every Monday, and I'll be the presenter, and we'll see if it works. It was kind of just this trial and error.
I get better than that.
It does.
The theme of the week was hope. And we had videos and stories, and we're all on Zooms, we're all in our little boxes. And we had 90 minutes. That's a long time on Zoom with 10-year-olds. Let me just tell you, that's a long time for 10-year-olds. We got to the last 10 minutes, and we had this quirky question with our theme of hope. And it was about, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? And most of her sweet students, they were going to be the NBA star, or they were going to be a movie star. Or, they all have these kind of fun, aspirational things. And one of her 10-year-olds in our chat room wrote 4 letters that stopped me in my tracks. DEAD. And I just wept. And he's 10. And to be at a place when you are 10 years old and think that you're going to be dead before you turn 20 is inexcusable for our system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think at that moment we realized this is a lot more than just an experiment. And we have 12 weeks till Christmas, and we're not going anywhere. This is guerrilla tactics, whatever we need to do to get that little boy to have a different outcome. And so Deborah knows it was such a gift that we fixated on that young man. Week after week after week, we got mentors, we got stuff donated. And by the holidays, he was so inspirational that he wanted to go out and he wanted to feed the homeless.
Oh,
Because he said that he knew what it was like to be hungry and to be homeless. And he didn't want anybody to go through what he went through. And that's not me. That's Deborah. I was there 90 minutes every Monday. She was with that little boy every single day, 5 days a week, nights and weekends, making sure he realized you are not falling through the cracks.
Debster, what's it feel like hearing Erin say all of this?
It's just so surreal because it just feels like I think for so long I felt like I was going against the grain, and was I doing what I was doing? Was it right? Is it the right thing to do? Because everybody's telling me, don't do these hug circles, close the door. Why are you trying to get to know them? And I was always, I felt like I was being told a lot, this is the wrong thing to do. So it's just so surreal because it's no, we are doing the right thing. And it's I don't, it's just so surreal. I'm trying not to cry, to be honest with you.
Everybody that listens to my podcast knows I'm a crier. Or as Erin beautifully said it, what did you say that Debbie emotes?
She does emote passion.
So I'm just going to say, you guys, I'm not a crier. I just emote a lot of passion. But to kind of put it in perspective for everyone listening or watching on YouTube, to have Erin say these things about Debbie would be like Dolly Parton sitting on the couch next to me saying that she was inspired by me. I mean, I would absolutely crap my pants. So I think Debbie's doing a good job to cry. And you're not even ugly crying.
No, she's a pretty cry.
It's a very,
you're
a very pretty crier. I know that people are probably going to be interested in possibly implementing Freedom Rider curriculum into their classrooms or learning more about it. And, I know that for Debbie, you've been told that hug circles were a waste of time, which is ridiculous because hugs are never a waste of time. So, and you're proof that the Freedom Rider curriculum has not only helped you, but inspire your students and others. So, Erin, for those that are interested in learning more about what you do or kind of getting involved, what can they do,
I think the pandemic made us change everything. We just thought, how can we be more accessible to a kid who's hurting? And I think Deb could attest to this. Kids are more depressed than ever. Social anxiety is on the rise. And we've seen, tragically, more suicides in the pandemic because there's so much food insecurity and there's so much ambiguity of, are our parents going to keep their jobs? Are we going to be evicted? Am I going to get this horrible disease? So I think a lot of that fear that we've seen play out in the media is trapped in a kid's home. So I think what we try to do in this last year is just reinvent ourselves. Before I used to do teacher trainings and I would travel, and now I'm in a box on my computer every day. So we've tried to do anything and everything to make ourselves available for kids. How could a kid who's in a really dark place find us? And in finding us, can we be the beacon that says it's gonna get better? You're not alone. And I love what Deborah said. For a lot of teachers, we have, and it's a collective we have an imposter complex because we go into our classroom, we shut the door, and we're alone. And it's scary. It's a scary prospect because, kids have truth serum and they have great bullshit detectors and they will call you out.
They really do.
And so I think that for teachers, we were trying to be accessible to kids by making really cool stuff for kids, but also for teachers to say, it is terrifying. How do you teach on Zoom? What is a hybrid class? We still don't know what the future holds. And so I think for our foundation, it was just almost like when you boil water, put some noodles in it and throw it on the wall.
Yeah.
Like we just try to figure out what sticks. And we've tried a little bit of everything and, trying to figure out what sticks.
What have you found is sticking, Debbie?
I think the curriculum has really helped us, and also just doing the social emotional with the students. So like academics is important, but they also are humans. So finding out how they're feeling, we do every day, twice a day on our Zooms. How are you feeling 1 through 5? 1's low, 5's high. So we have an idea of where they're at. And so I think just getting in touch with their social emotional, like knowing that the other stuff's gonna come, but appeasing this part of it. Cause I know we're all feeling the same way. So we've been really transparent about it. Like the first Zooms, like we're all scared. We're all stressed. We're gonna get through this together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Deborah and her students allowed us to kind of tweak some of the things we did, which I appreciate and I thank you. So a lot of things that both Deborah and I do is really kinesthetic. We're, everything's touch and feel. But when you're in a box, you're very limited. So one of the activities that we would traditionally do with kids, we call the line game. And I think it's one of the sweetest moments of the film because they did recreate it. And in the film, we actually didn't hire actors to play my students. We actually hired, the majority of the kids were actually real teenagers who had never really acted. One was homeless living in a car. Another one was at a shelter. Someone had just come out of rehab. So, they had an edge and they had a story. So we realized when we wanted to play the line game with Deborah's kids that, we're stuck in these boxes like the Brady Bunch. So we coined the line game with the shoe game. And so everyone was in their little box and they had to take their shoe, their slipper, or a sock and hold it up. So everyone could actually see the shoe, the slipper, or the socks. And we started out very silly with songs and pop culture, and then it got really heavy. And then it got to the point where you just wanted to weep. And what I love about the environment that Deborah created is just when you wanted to weep, her kids would compliment each other and say, I don't feel alone, or they would do emojis or just something that was so beautiful and inspiring. And Deb has kids who in elementary school and middle school who are bullied.
Yeah.
She has kids who have already identified that they are LGBTQIA and they're 10 or 11. She has a little girl in her program who lost 4 friends to suicide before she turned 13. So these kids have seen things that no kid should see.
Absolutely.
Have experienced things that no kid should experience. And every time they held up their shoe, there was this feeling of, oh my God, we can't hug them because they're home. But then little Michael, who was 10, would send an emoji. And little Howard, who's 11, would send an emoji. And these beautiful kids, I think they felt what we were feeling. Like, we can't, physically give you a hug. But Deborah's creating an environment where we can give a virtual hug. And it was just beautiful.
I dropped out of school because I was being bullied and because no one would listen to me. And my mom would take me to the school, all the time. And we would talk to the counselors and Mr. Wade, if you're listening, you fucked up. He was my math teacher and then he became the principal. And he just kind of dismissed me being bullied as me being dramatic. And he would always tell me, well, there's nothing on the cameras and there's nothing I could do, because they would wait for me down the hallways where there weren't cameras to try and shove me into lockers. And I joke, in my book that I couldn't fit into the lockers. So there wasn't much they could do. But, jokes aside, it really sucked because I kind of grew up my entire life until recently thinking that I was not very smart. I always thought, I went to Mississippi and I went to high school in an old Walmart building. Save that story for another day. And, I'm not that smart and I'm not all of these things. And then, it took kind of actually a partner I was dating, last year, telling me, who is incredibly bright, telling me, Tess, you're really smart. Like, you're really bright. And I remember thinking, this person is like, practically Ivy League educated. They're, they know what smart is. And so I started kind of saying, wait, no, everything that I was told was wrong. But and even though, I was born, with privilege of just being, white and I didn't have any money, but, again, born privileged, and most of your students I know are students of color, and automatically just kind of categorized and, like you guys said, tossed away. I can't imagine what it would be like to be on the other side of that, because me already having such, so many kind of tools at my disposal and no one listening to me, and then having to kind of figure it out on my own, having teachers like you guys actually listen to me when I would have been that age would have changed the course of my life,
I'm fixated on that principle of yours.
Yeah.
And I am fixated because I'm disturbed that people with power dismiss and could dismiss you, because not even just the word, but you're brilliant. And you have this intuition that is amazing. If you were my student, you would be like an A+ student.
Thank you.
And so there's a part of me that wants to have like a do-over.
I would love that.
But I'm furious that somebody that had the opportunity with you let that opportunity slip by. And not only slip by, to make it worse, to not validate you, to minimize you, to have you have more insecurities when they could have reassured you. So there's a part of me that wants you to send this podcast to that principal and say, look at the cover of People magazine. I'm on it.
I will send this to Mr. Wade at West Jones High in Laurel, Mississippi. Don't you think I won't? Because I sure will.
But I think for me as an educator, that's where I get triggered, is when people who should know better don't do better.
Absolutely.
And he should have known better.
Yeah, he should have known better. And, that's why really, I've had a few people in my life kind of tell me, it's kind of weird that you've become friends with like a few of your followers. Like, don't you think it's weird? And then I think, why? Because my followers are just normal people that are usually doing way cooler things than I am. And when I met Debbie, I was so, intrigued and amazed with the work that she was doing and the conditions that she was teaching in. Literally, we live right. I live in LA. She lives outside of LA, teaches, outside in LA. And you're just like, how can these kids not have electricity, not have meals? They live on streets where the roads aren't even paved. Like, we were driving through some of these streets and like, I had black eyes.
She was not prepared. She was not prepared.
I was not prepared. But, I'm not naive, but I just remember thinking like, and I had heard Debbie tell this, but I just thought, well, it's probably not that bad. And then seeing it, you're like, wait, it's actually worse than I thought.
And in her community, there's such a high population of foster kids. It's like big business. So it's so disproportionate that because it's a economically challenged community, a lot of people get into the business of foster care, and they do so for the wrong reasons. And those are the students that wind up in her program.
And the reality of the situation is everything that's going on today, a lot of it is stemming from schools. These labels and everything is starting. So like the stuff that's going on, I feel like in adult problems now is starting in our educational system. More of us have to step up for these kids and really listen, because whatever's been working for the last years hasn't been working. Hurting people don't get better.
Yeah. And like Erin said earlier, and this has really, I've learned a lot about the school to prison pipeline, and just also how, Black folks especially are treated in America, and what are we doing to help these individuals that no one is listening to. So, I think that it's so incredibly important to talk about these things. And like you said, Erin, I wish that, I would have had someone listen to me, but I also understand the enormous privilege that I had. And it's probably why I'm sitting here today versus sitting in a prison like someone else that wouldn't have been as fortunate.
I think what could also be really helpful is for kids who are forced to read books in this like literary canon that don't speak to them. Kids could read your book. Kids could read your book and say, I could be like her. And I think that was really important for me when I was teaching the Freedom Writers, was finding literature that wasn't in the mainstream, where where my students realize, oh my God, there's somebody like me
Absolutely.
who wrote a book, and there's somebody like me who's gone on to do X, Y, and Z. And so, if there are teachers who are listening and they have a young Tess in their class, your book could be part of the curriculum, your lessons.
It's wild, I thank you for saying that. I get, fans send me photos all the time saying like, oh, I checked your book out of my local library, or this person's like, oh, I've been trying to get it from my library, but it was like everybody always had it and I finally got it. And as an author, it's wild because you write this book and then it just kind of lives forever. And I remember being really disappointed when my book didn't, do as well as I wanted to. And it wasn't like a New York Times bestseller. And I remember being so hard on myself. And then when I realized the reason that I wrote my book was to help others. And like you said, to make other Tesses out there, other folks that are othered feel less alone. That's actually what I give a shit about, is somebody picking up the book and feeling seen and feeling like maybe it's not me, maybe it's the other people around me, maybe no one's listening to me, and this doesn't have to be my life, just, with the cards I've been dealt, and so I had to kind of realize that, but maybe I'll get a go at it a second time and it will be, but also none of that stuff really matters. I think it's just helping others and being okay with the fact that you can still love and help others, and it doesn't have to be what is traditionally deemed a success, I guess, if that makes sense. I feel like I was rambling a little bit. I was trying to tie a ribbon on that and I couldn't. So for both of you, is there a moment that sticks out where you really realized that you were following your purpose? Or maybe just, it could be a couple moments, but just kind of when you knew, like, I'm really following my purpose, my path.
I don't know if there was really a specific moment. I know that I had all kinds of odd jobs before I even became a teacher. So I remember the first time I stood in front of the classroom feeling like, okay, this is where I needed to be. And I think I was at a really low point in my life. At one point in my teaching, I had a lot of outside stuff going on. There was a lot of noise around what I was doing, and was I doing the right thing with kids? I would have all these kids come in my class during their recesses and lunches and stuff, and they wanted to help the other kids. So I had this big family all the time, and I had this really low day, and I got on campus, and I remember I didn't even feel like I wanted to be there, and I was struggling with my own mental health. And there was this girl, and I love her, and she was a sixth grader. She wasn't even mine, but she was part of our group. And she runs and she's like, Miss Fernandez, screaming across. And I was just so lost with my thoughts and is my life where I want to be? And just this low point. And she looked at me and she goes, Miss Fernandez, I don't know what I would do if I didn't see you. Every single day you make me smile. You make so many people happy whenever I see you. And I was like, okay, that's what I needed. That was my wake up, and I'm like, all right, I got to keep going. Yeah. That's my bigger purpose. Was that kid had to wake me up out of my stoop that I was in.
Yeah. What about you, Erin?
I think one of the first crash boom bam moments for me was realizing that my students had never read a book, and I'm an English teacher, so that was a terrifying thing. How can I get them to read? So the first book that they read was something I bought them because I had all these extra jobs, and it was The Diary of Anne Frank. And through reading The Diary of Anne Frank, they discovered that this really simple secretary, she was still living at the time, she was 87. And during World War II, she was the sole reason that they survived. She brought in food and paper and helped them survive for the 2 years. So my students wanted to write to her rather than do a book report. And, I thought it was a really kind of fun writing assignment. So we went to the computer lab. We didn't even have computers at that time. So we went to the computer lab, and, there was typos and grammar mistakes, but I thought this is a great assignment because they envision her as the reader, not me. And then those stories sat on my kitchen table, and I didn't send them because I didn't think that an 87-year-old woman would read 150 letters by 150 gangsters. And for my students, it was unfathomable that she wouldn't just come. Like, why won't she just come? When she reads, she's going to realize that we're like Anne Frank. So they started coming up with these silly ways to raise money to bring her. But like Deborah's students, my students were really poor. So their raising money was pennies, nickels, and dimes, not dollars and credit cards and checks.
Yes.
And so on a day that we had $18, one of my students put me on the spot and he said, Miss G, what happens if we raise all this money and she doesn't come? And in my mind, those letters were still on my kitchen table. So I tried to think of a way to kind of circumvent this question. And I said, well, if she doesn't come and we raise all this money, we can have a pizza party or we can get more books. Maybe we can even go to the movies. So, it's a win-win because we raised the money together. And to this day, I don't know how or why, but I said, but if she does come, your lives will never be the same. And she did. I went home and I sent those letters, typos and grammar mistakes at all. And she came. And she was like living history, this little 87-year-old icon who was so normal and so almost like regal. And that was the moment that I realized that people can jump out of the pages of a book and you can touch and feel them. It was like, who else can we read? And who else is out there? And who else can we meet? And so I know that she helped Anne Frank, not thinking about a book being, on a shelf or a movie being made about Anne Frank. She did it. And in this moment of her telling her story, one of my students stood up and he said, I've never had a hero before, but you're my hero. And she got really upset with that comment. And she pounded her fist on this little desk. And she said, no, I'm not a hero. I simply did what I had to do because it was the right thing to do. And I just love how simple that is. And yet anything but simple. And so, she helped Anne Frank because it was the right thing. Deborah and I teach because it's the right thing. You wrote a book and have a podcast because you're reaching people that you don't even know you're reaching. And I think that's the important thing is sometimes the most simplistic things are anything but simple.
Wow, that was the first time I've cried on my podcast. You guys didn't see it because I'm a superstar, so I kept it from trickling. But that was a very beautiful story. And what I kept thinking as you were saying it is just how, why I do and you guys do what you do is to genuinely, I just want to help others. And I don't always know the way that I'm going to do it. I know I'm not doing it the right way. And I hope that the takeaway from those that are listening and watching is that you don't have to really know what you're doing. It's just the intention and why you're doing it. And as long as you know that, your heart is in the right place and that you just want to make the world a better place, maybe your community, this individual, whatever the situation is, that's really all that matters. I mean,
if I just say, if I have someone who will always give me grief about what I'm doing because I'm exhausted or there's a lot of stuff, and I'll just say, well, if not me, who?
Yeah.
Someone's got to do it.
Absolutely. Erin, how can someone get involved, in their local education system if, they want to get Freedom Writers curriculum, or if they're hearing this story and thinking like, this is a similar situation in classroom, what can they do?
What's been amazing is with Zoom, we're everywhere. Technology's changed, so that makes us more accessible. And whenever we get these cries for help, what's been amazing is I can identify the Freedom Writer that can be the perfect solution. So depending on the community they're in, then I could say, I think you should talk to Melvin, or I think you should talk to Carlos. And it's been really fun virtually kind of taking a need and then finding an original freedom writer who's willing to sit down and tell their story. And it's been so amazing. My students are now adults, and some of them are parents themselves, but they've continued to write, and we're working on a new book project. And Deborah's students are part of this project. So that's been a neat thing that came from the pandemic, is writing yet again. And this time, the cry for help is the youth, and the solutions coming from my original students. So, the nice thing is if people find us, we find a solution.
I love that. What are some misconceptions about the work that you guys do?
I think the biggest misconception is, first of all, it's easy. Second of all, I think that they think that we're just doing hug circles is what they're talking about. But really, it's about accountability. The kids have to be accountable for their actions. So, okay, yes, we messed up. How are we going to fix it? What are you going to do to make it better? So our goal is kind of like, how are we going to make them be better humans in the long run? What are we going to do to make them come out and not be labeled as they are? What are we going to do to make them be better neighbors, be better students, and pass that love down?
I think teachers are overworked and underpaid.
Absolutely.
And underappreciated.
Yes.
And in being underpaid, I marveled at Deborah during the holidays. If the only meal some kids get is a grab and go, free breakfast, free lunch, if they're transportationally challenged to get to school and get that grab and go, they're just not eating. So what I marveled that Deborah did over the holidays is she had these huge bags filled with food, knowing these kids were going to be hungry. And it was simple things just like mac and cheese and canned soup. And I love that she was driving around and delivering, but I also know that she was using her own money, which also made me sad that that teachers don't have expense accounts and they don't get reimbursed. And that's something that I think teachers are the first to do, is take their own money for art supplies or for food or all those things that kids don't have.
I've been blessed to have some friends, which I'm lucky this time, like I know you went and helped and stuff. And it's funny because the kids growing up, I would talk about my own kids, and I'd be like, the kids, and they'd be like, all right, we're talking about the whole family. Like the whole family's going to get something.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's much easier for me to donate than I know for some other folks, but I know for folks that are listening and want to donate or help, how are they able to do so? Whether that's Freedom Writers or with you, Debbie.
So reach me at restoratively Deb on Instagram. I'm going to be doing another round with the kids. We realized during spring break that they're not getting fed. There's not going to be meals every day. So I'm going to be going out and doing that with the kids, and probably during the summer. And so I can be reached there.
Cool. Yeah. We have to set up some kind of little system, maybe like a Venmo or something. We're going to figure it out by the time this episode drops, because it is helpful, because any money that is donated towards Debbie goes to providing for the students that, they don't have access to, simple things like meals, like Erin was saying, especially with the students going, being out of school for summer. That means that, again, a lot of them are going without food, without maybe emotional support that they need. I mean, I know that you guys you're going to check in on them.
No one disappears.
Summer, that they're stuck with you. All right, Erin. So you have a podcast. It's the Freedom Writers Podcast that I was lucky enough to be a guest on. And, what is it about the work that you're doing, IRL in the classroom? How does that overlap into the work that you're doing with the podcast?
Well, you were an amazing guest.
Thank you.
And I'm sort of jealous because when you came to our office, I didn't have pajamas or treats. I just had dogs that were in the room with us farting the entire time. Do you remember that?
I absolutely. I will never forget those smells. But also, I will take dogs over pajamas and snacks any day.
So our podcast originally started with taking like authors and activists and bringing them to life. It was very nerdy. I'm a nerdy English teacher at heart. So it was who in our world do we know and how could we bring the subject to life? So originally it was a Holocaust survivor or it was one of our favorite authors. And then where we morphed into and how you were perfect was how do we bring in guests who speak to kids? And teachers are assigning it. Like you are an assignment test. So these teachers will contact us and they assign the podcast and have writing assignments and books that they can attach. And we realized that for a lot of kids, reading is really hard. So why not bring action figures to life? And you're an action figure. And so not like Marvel or DC Comics, real people who do real things. And so our podcast really was for teachers to then use with their students and make education come to life. And so it's always real voices. And hopefully a kid will be inspired to say, I'm just like them. And so that's why we were perfect because it was in the middle of a pandemic.
It was.
And you were our first like face-to-face podcast where we could be knee to knee. Because everything else we'd done during the pandemic was socially distanced. And it just doesn't have that same intimacy when you're sitting next to each other.
It doesn't. And you gave me good practice because I was in the middle of kind of prepping for my own podcast and I got to see you guys, you know, at work. And I really realized very quickly that podcasts are so much more work than people really understand. But yeah, it was my honor. And I've always wanted to be an action figure and I didn't even have to get abs to do it. So I'm stoked. Thank you both for sharing with me today and hopefully, well, not hopefully, I know that you guys are inspiring everyone listening and watching. It would be impossible not to. And before I let you guys go, every slumber party has to have a game. So we did a really special game for you two today. So the rules are really quick. We are going to play Never Have I Ever, but Disney edition. Okay, so the rules really quick. All of us, we're going to hold up a hand. So we're going to show 5 fingers and we're going to keep them up the whole time. And I'm going to read out statements, which if you have done the action, you will put a finger down. Okay? All right. You guys ready? All right. Never have I ever kissed someone in the Haunted Mansion. Debbie and I put a finger down.
So that means you put your finger down if you have?
Yes.
Okay, I have not.
Well, we can change that. Never have I ever had a crush on a Disney character. You never had a crush on a Disney character, Erin? Like a cartoon or a villain?
I'm thinking. You guys are true Disney girls.
Moana or The Rock.
The Rock. Debbie's like The Rock. I had a crush on Robin Hood, like the cartoon Robin Hood, like the animated fox. I loved his accent and I just was like, he cares about people that no one else cares about. So yeah, my crush was a cartoon fox. Never have I ever ditched work to go to Disney.
It's a mental health day. It's called Dr. Disney. Dr. Disney.
I'm sorry, Disney. I'm sorry.
Erin's like, nope, still not.
I know you set me up for this one.
How about whoever has all their fingers up pays for dinner tonight?
Oh, no.
I think it's going to be me.
No, I picked an expensive restaurant. It has to be me. Never have I ever eaten a whole turkey leg. I never have either. They're gross. I don't want to gnaw on a big leg of meat. You know what I mean?
Oh, I can't watch people eat them either.
I can't either. Okay. Never have I ever had Dole Whip more than once in a day. Yeah. Debbie and I both have one.
What was that?
A
Dole Whip.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, Erin, we're going.
Erin.
As soon as Disneyland opens, we have a Disneyland date. We're going.
I wish you could see my face. So Debbie and I have one finger left each. Erin has all 5. And then she's just told us she doesn't know what Dole Whip is.
Oh.
Dole Whip is like, I actually, for my baby shower, we ordered Dole Whip from Hawaii, where they make it and distribute it, and made it at my baby shower.
It's like a pineapple goodness.
It's like a pineapple
drink it. Like a
ice
freeze
cream,
almost?
but it's dairy free,
okay.
and it's like a cult.
It's magical.
Okay, well,
Did I lose? Did I win or did I lose?
I mean, it depends on how you look at it, Erin. We're all winners here.
I'm an overachiever and I feel like I lost
You-
miserably.
You won. We're just Disney fanatics.
No, we just proved how silly we are. Before we go, Erin and Deb, I ask everybody the same question, and I want to ask you guys today, and it cannot be hanging out with me at the podcast. And I feel like Erin kind of already answered it earlier, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Erin and Deb, how did you two show yourself love today?
I got up and I ate a cookie
Yeah.
for breakfast. And then I went to my best friend's house and I got my makeup done, I think. So I guess it wasn't showing me love, but the cookie was showing me love and hanging out with my best friend.
You were showing yourself love. Shablam, my makeup artist, did my makeup today just because I felt like getting dressed up.
You look
today.
gorgeous.
Thank you. You look adorable. And I whispered to him, and we were outside because obviously Debbie was going to be my guest. And I was like, can you do Debbie's makeup? And he's like, I'll do a little something. And then he did she has fake eyelashes on. He did the whole shebang.
Ooh la la. Her kids are going to freak.
They are gonna freak. Erin, how did you show yourself love today?
By having my alter ego. I feel like when I wear my lion onesie, I feel like fearless.
I love
and
it.
I'm afraid a lot of the time. So today I'm feeling fearless.
I love that. I love that. I want to thank Erin Gruwell and Debbie Fernandez for being my guests today. You guys are truly making the world a better place. Where can my listeners and viewers find you guys on social media?
I'm at Restoratively Deb on Instagram.
And we are the Freedom Writers Foundation. So all the different handles.
And what is the website for them?
We're freedomwritersfoundation.org.
Cool. All right. Thank you to everyone at home at your own slumber party for tuning in. And remember, if you were listening to this episode, you can check us out on YouTube. And if you were watching this episode, you can also listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to follow, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. And also be nice in the reviews. God, I read actually all of the reviews were nice, but one, but whatever. And like and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks, y'all.